Well, I mean, I like to sort of prepare for things, and so obviously I did. I prepared a long time ago for the possibility of becoming a dad. After 6 years of kind of being in my medical transition, I actually thought, look, I'm 35. I want to give myself a chance to one day become a dad. So I actually stopped testosterone use for 6 months and kind of let it all clear out. And then I went through the quite difficult and obviously very emasculating and, riddled with all sorts of difficulties and financial woes and stresses and so on, and had eggs harvested, which was obviously quite difficult. My mum, amazingly, who's supported me always, she supported me through that. And I was a single man going through this. When I went to the London Women's Clinic in Harley Street, they were amazing and very helpful and very open to trying with me. But they did say quite candidly, we've never met a guy like you. We've never had anyone like you come in and try and do this after 6 years on testosterone. So we have no statistics. We can't tell you if it's going to work, if it's going to take, if anything will grow. So, they were very frank with me, and I went into it eyes wide open, thinking nothing was going to work. And then it did, and it was a miracle. And I did 2 cycles and ended up with 5 embryos on ice at 5-day blastocyst, and thought, my God, I've got 5 little hopes, 5 little dreams out there. And they sat on ice for, I think, 2 or 3 years until obviously I met Hannah. So Hannah was very aware early on that we had 5 little hopes on ice. And as soon as we were married, we started our very, very difficult venture into the world of surrogacy, because as anyone who's sort of examined it or explored it or gone through a surrogacy journey will tell you, there's not a lot of information out there. The law is quite outdated now. There needs to be an update. There's been updates promised for years, but then obviously Brexit happened, and then obviously COVID happened, and I'm sure it's not anyone's massive priority. And obviously around the world, surrogacy is so difficult now. We learned so much, because obviously a lot of these countries where it was legal is now not legal for people who aren't of that country, places like India and Cambodia and so on. I didn't know that it was illegal in France, in Italy and Spain. So all of those people there have to go somewhere else. So it's either the US and Canada or Ukraine. And obviously Ukraine is pounding out babies, pumping out babies. I think around the region of sort of 5,000 babies a year are coming out of Ukraine. But at the same time, they won't touch LGBT people with a barge pole. And so, for all those LGBT people across places like France, Spain, Italy, and here, we had no option but to either stay here and do it or go to the US. And that was just, for us, it just wasn't financially possible. So we were very, very fortunate that we tried all the agencies here, and we spoke to a lot of people, and we went onto the Facebook surrogacy kind of Wild West, where none of it is regulated, and it's all...
Well, I've got to say, so I did something for Steph's Packed Lunch where we were looking into sperm donors, and I went to a fertility clinic, and it's crazy what you can find on Facebook. You know what I mean? But on the one hand, you're just like, well, these people just want to help people get pregnant because that's what they really, really want. Yeah. But you're right, that because there is no regulation in that sense. Yep. It's amazing what you can find on Facebook.
It shows the best of social media and the worst of social media. So the best of it is that you are connected to people. So you can find people on Facebook who you can pair up with and have this most incredible journey. That's the best bit, is you can connect to people across the world instantly through your laptop, through your mobile phone. The worst bit is that there are nefarious people out there who try to take advantage of it. And that is where it gets scary, especially when you're talking about surrogacy, because it's not just, the money, it's the emotions that are on the line. People who are going through surrogacy are doing it because...
So vulnerable, so vulnerable, which is, the first thing. Anyone who knows what it's like to want a child, you know that you are quite often, by that point where you're having to look at surrogacy, desperate, vulnerable, you would do anything. And obviously people will always abuse when people are in that situation.
Yeah, and it's the same for potential surrogates as well. Again, they're putting themselves in a very vulnerable position, and they do it, I think anyone who puts themselves there as a surrogate, is an amazing person. It's such a altruistic and incredible thing to do for someone, as we can attest. But again, you're putting yourself out there in quite a vulnerable way. And so, in the UK, you're stuck between kind of either doing it, off the record through Facebook, by meeting people, and you're opening yourself up to all of that. Or you have to go through agencies which suddenly come into lots of fees, lots of waiting lists, and it becomes very challenging. And so it's really difficult to navigate your way through that. And there's no one really to help you do it, is there?
I mean, we were very lucky that we met lots of people who'd either gone through surrogacy, were about to go through surrogacy, who were running some of the Facebook groups. We really we learned a lot in a very short time. But what we did also learn is that, as Hannah said, there are a lot of people out there who are preying quite literally on the vulnerability of people like us who are at this point willing to do anything. And in all fairness, we didn't even wait that long to find our surrogate, to find our wonderful Laura. We went to an agency, we went online, we met lots of people, and then we actually were being interviewed on Lorraine about something totally different and happened to say, yes, actually, we're looking for a surrogate. And got loads of women all of a sudden messaging us on Facebook, which was great. One, quite sadly, I think, actually offered us a baby. And I think they were having a really tough time. They said, please take my baby, which we sort of ignored that. Yeah. But we had lots of lovely women just saying, I've always wanted to do this. And, I've had my own family and I'm all set. And please let me help you. So, we chatted to all these women. Some of them dropped out for various reasons. Their husbands weren't up for it. They weren't quite ready. They hadn't thought about some of the ramifications. And then eventually we found our wonderful Laura, who just said, she had always wanted to be a surrogate for 12 years. There had been a time when she was going to have a child for her sister, and her sister then miraculously got pregnant. And she'd always held on to that. I would love to do that for another woman, for another parent, and to give that gift, that ultimate gift, to another family. And her husband at the time hadn't been very open to that. And at the time we met her, they were in fact getting separated anyway. And apparently one of the first things she wanted to do when everything kind of fell apart was become a surrogate. And it just was the perfect kind of aligning of, wow, we found you, you found us. And, much to our amazement, I think, again, because of all the sort of terrible media transphobia at the moment, we were absolutely blown away that anyone would want to do that for us. And I think when we had the conversation with Laura after knowing her for about sort of 3 or 4 months, and I think we were equally nervous, weirdly. We were so desperate for her to say yes. And I think she was quite desperate for us to say yes. And so
it must be so weird. I mean, talking to each other online but actually going to meet each other, it's like a first date, but so much is resting on it. So as much as you're going there going, oh, gosh, we hope that we like her. We hope that, her everything about her aligns with us. You're also going there going, I hope she likes us, because I hope I don't come off as a tit, because otherwise, then she won't want to be our surrogate. So you must be so nervous going into that meeting.
Yeah, but we honestly, the conversations that we had to have very early on about things that we'd never thought about, whilst obviously you're drawing up the surrogacy agreement, things like what would happen if you both died whilst the baby was in the womb? Who would have the baby? What would happen if there was something wrong with the baby in the womb? What would, all of these conversations that you have to have that you'd never thought about. What an awful thing to have to discuss with my wife. What if we both died and our baby was still inside Laura, and what would happen to her and how would that all happen? And, drawing up of wills and so on. I mean, there was some quite sobering and quite depressing, really, talking about us both dying, quite depressing moments. And then, obviously we're talking to family and friends about who'd have the baby and, getting some funny reactions about that. A lot of people were sort of, yeah, of course we'd have the baby, no problem. But a lot of people were kind of a bit like, ooh, I don't know. And then you get a text later on that night saying, yes, of course we'll have the baby, for God's sake. So it was...
Which is probably good, though, that, first of all, then they've really thought about it. They've not just gone, yes, definitely, you die, I get the baby. Thumbs up.
No, you are absolutely right. I mean, it was just, I think we really had to think things through, which is good because, my God, you have to think things through. And, we had to have these conversations with Laura. I mean, the number of times I've had to discuss Laura's menstrual cycle with her. And I every time I go, oh, God, and Laura's like, oh, you hate this, don't you? And I'm like, yes, I hate talking about your period. Yes, Laura, that is absolutely accurate. But, we all became so close because obviously, not only did we go through all of those conversations, but then we went through a pandemic together. So, we were fairly solid. And the fact that we managed to bring Millie safely into the world in the middle of all that is nothing short of miraculous.